All right, welcome to episode 3 of the Teflon Tales. With me, I have my guest, Michael Tonart. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing well. So, for the people watching live, thanks for taking the time. For those who are watching the recording after the fact, hopefully you have you have as good, if not a better session than if you were live. So, Michael, I want to start with something that you and I chatted last week, and that is starting with somebody in your family, namely your father, who
Mhm.
was a consummate sales leader for pretty much his entire life,
Yeah, this.
and he's been telling you, and you were talking a little bit about how he was trying to get drilled into you about, hey, Michael, are you going to be a marketer? Are you going to be a salesperson? Are you going to be uh, a tech person? Pick your career and go after it. And you have different thoughts. So talk a little bit about why.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm so really excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me first and foremost. And yeah, so my dad was a sales leader, as you mentioned, from the time he joined the job force. Which my dad's a little bit older. My dad's in his mid 70s now. So when he joined, he started doing sales around the age of 18, 19 years old, and he's been doing it. I mean, literally ever since, and he's still currently doing it on a full time basis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's all he did. That's all he knew, and that was his thing. So as I was starting to get ready to get out of college and getting my first jobs out of school and starting my professional career, the conversations would come up. What path are you going to choose? Are
Mm-hmm.
you going to choose a path? Are you
Yeah.
going to be a sales leader? Are you going to focus on marketing? Are you going to focus on maybe going the tech route? What is your path going to be? Because when he grew up,
Yeah.
having a path was considered safe.
Right.
It was considered the right thing to do. It was considered you do something, you become great at it, and that's pretty
Right.
much what you do from the time your career starts to the time your career ends.
Right.
And I didn't think that way. I didn't. I'm not saying there's not value in that,
Yeah.
because there absolutely is. But for me, the value was becoming more diversified and, you know, building out my arsenal of, skills and experiences, to remain and become more flexible and adaptable.
Right.
And,
Right.
and it was just, when we were talking initially, I never really think I verbalized to somebody that exact thought,
Yeah.
kind of what I was thinking when I was getting started in my career.
Right.
And
Right.
it kind of really clicked when we talked about it. I was like, you know what, like this is definitely something, and I think there's definitely more value in it than I even realized initially. So I was so happy that you asked that, and look where we're at. We're talking about that now. So
No, it's so again, it just resonates so much with me. Again, folks who are joining, feel free to engage in commentary, and this is a conversation. So I'm happy to pose some of your questions to Michael as well, and maybe I can answer a few too. So again, as you were talking about this multidimensional or being ambidextrous, for me again, my own journey again coming from India. We immigrated about 20, 25 years ago now. And at that point, the path was, okay, are you going down the engineering path? Are you going down the medical path? And then there's this everything else path, right?
yeah,
Um, and as we were discussing, one of the things, again, I'm going to pose this to you, just given where we are right now, right? Midst of a pandemic, and this is probably going to stay with us for a while, whether we like it or not. And we've talked about industries that are completely getting upended, right? Restaurant industry, hair salons, people are afraid to go in. Even the dentist I was
yeah,
at yesterday, it was like, I want to be in and out really quickly. And
yeah.
they wanted to shoo me away as quickly as possible too, right?
You
So
never want to be at the dentist. Let's be honest. You never really want to be at the dentist. This is the perfect way to
yeah,
get out of it.
yeah. Even on a good day, you're right. We don't want to be at a dentist. But again, I was asking them like, "How's your?" As she was
Sure.
cleaning my teeth, I was asking her like, "How's your traffic?" And she says, "We're about 50% of what we normally are." Right.
Mhm.
So that means revenues are down. That means jobs are going away. So when you talk about being, again, going back to the Teflon analogy, the idea of getting hot very quickly,
Mhm.
being able to stay non-sticky. I know you try a number of different things. So what tips do you have, number one, in terms of how do you get hot quickly? Because I know people are saying, oh, I want to write an article, and they've been saying that for years. Not one word has come out, right?
Mhm.
But the flip side to that, again, you're in a perfect position to talk about it, is how do you slow down on certain things because the fear of burnout, right? If you're trying to do too many things simultaneously. So how do you ensure the ones that are actually getting traction, you put more muscle power behind it and then pull back, for example, where things, maybe the shifting sands or maybe the audience isn't there, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, so kind of how, I'll start with like the first question, like kind of how I got into that mindset and started choosing that was, I started my career in person-to-person sales.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got some opportunities in marketing with my first couple jobs. So I was able to position myself into getting those initial opportunities to start getting a taste and a little bit of each. And I think I quickly realized that there's such value in having experiences in both and being able to do both to, a higher degree, especially in my case, being in the sales and marketing sphere.
Mm-hmm.
That there's very much a cohesion in how they interact with each other.
Yep.
And, when I was finally able to, land my feet at a really good organization that provided me with a lot of experiences and a lot of opportunities, I doubled down on that because, I talked about it in another podcast was, self-awareness and really knowing yourself.
Yep.
and understanding your strengths and double downing on those strengths. And I think, I really had a good understanding of what I wanted to get out of my career at a certain point. And I pretty much came to the conclusion that having the ability to be flexible
Mm-hmm.
and to do either or function
Mm-hmm.
at a high level where it still brings value to your organization is really important because, I noticed really early on, joining my current organization and others as well, and seeing friends and other colleagues go to different places is a lot of times still to this day, we'll get stuck in either, as we mentioned earlier with my dad, getting stuck into a traditional sales route, or we're getting stuck as just doing marketing or just doing, whatever production or graphic design or something along those lines. And, once again, there's nothing wrong with that. But in today's day and age there's a lot of unexpecteds. We just learned there's so many unexpecteds that you can't take normalcy for granted. In a way.
Yep.
And I feel like with this happening, that if I were to lose my job for whatever the reason, thankfully I am still employed. But if I were to lose my job, I now have a multitude of experiences where I could really shift to a number of different opportunities and still bring a high level of value to that organization. And as I was getting into that mindset, I'm like, you know what? I made the right call. And this even confirmed it. COVID absolutely confirmed. I'm so happy that I made that decision early on to diversify myself. And granted, I'm a big advocate of if I would rather spend my time working on the things that I'm good at,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily the things that I'm not good at. There's value to become better at things.
Right.
But, I think you need to double down on those strengths. And I found strengths in both. I found strengths in marketing and being a creative, but also being very comfortable in front of people and engaging and doing the whole sales thing as well, where I can bounce either way and deliver,
No, that's a great point. Again, thanks, William, for your comment as well. Looks like it resonated with him as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something that you touched upon, which I think is really, really important, which is self-awareness, right? Mm-hmm. And we were talking about something that I'm sure all of us are dealing with, which is Zoom fatigue. And another podcast guest of mine, he was talking about when he went to a sales team, and this is a small startup, right? And he told them, hey, don't assume that people are working from home. People are working from crisis centers. Your parents and you have kids going to school remotely. You're living in a low-income neighborhood and your bandwidth isn't there. You have aging parents at home. You have job losses. And for me, when you're talking about sales and marketing as an example, I was just thinking, right, if you think about those two things, right, which is people have Zoom fatigue. They are tired sooner than they usually are. And you're talking about, hey, the world has changed, right? Commuting isn't there. Snow days aren't there for schools. So the self-awareness and then the awareness of what your audience is going through and not just pretending virtual in front of everything and saying, hey, like you were saying, hey, there's this people aspect of engaging with others. And how do you do it on Zoom? Like, how do you get to know people? But also talk a little bit about the understanding of just you were good at one thing, but the world has changed. People are in crisis centers. They have Zoom fatigue among number of things. But just taking those two things and saying, okay, how do I now adapt myself to be an equally effective salesperson, equally effective marketer when my audience is has changed thus?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, trying to sell and engage virtually versus in person is a whole different ballgame.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a night. In my opinion, it's a night and day difference because I really thrive in that person-to-person physical environment. Picking up on nonverbal cues, verbal cues,
Yeah.
body language, all that kind of stuff. The environment that you're in. So, I'm very comfortable with that. But having to adapt to, trying to speak with somebody and convey a certain thought, a certain feeling, trying to paint a picture.
Mm-hmm.
Is a little bit more challenging, and you have to use different tools to your advantage. And and thankfully I haven't had to spend as much time on Zoom as other colleagues have.
Yeah.
I've definitely had to do it. Don't get me wrong. I've had to give multiple presentations and multiple team meetings over Zoom to customers and just fellow colleagues. But there's other colleagues of mine that, as I was telling you earlier, they're on Zoom 6-7 hours a day, and there's definitely a fatigue that goes along with that.
Yeah.
And there's definitely almost like a suppression of yourself.
Correct.
In that way, like you're going from like cube to office to being able just to move around and
Exactly.
jump in someone's chair and talk to them in person really quick instead of sitting there staring at your blue screen all day. It definitely suppresses a lot of your strengths and a lot of the things that people pick up from that in-person interaction. And I feel like, at least for me, when I spent time out with my customers and the people that I work with on a regular basis in a very physical environment,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to really, I feel, build that relationship, and they really got the chance to really know me. So, at least from my experience, being virtual or being on the phone more than I ever have been before, I built that foundation ahead of time. So, they already know what to expect from me.
Yeah.
They can feel my energy because they know that I'm a very charismatic person by nature. And I feel like people sometimes that maybe aren't as animated or engaging in their energy levels and their charisma might have to dig deep and maybe learn something new about themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get somebody excited or get someone really interested or engaged. It's just sitting here talking, face to face, and there's nothing else that kind of feeds into that. We could do all the fun stuff with our backgrounds on
Yeah, the virtual and then the face mask.
backgrounds. Like we could do all that kind of stuff, but there's still nothing that beats it. So I feel like people need to really, take an inventory of themselves and how they kind of come off, and how to still get somebody excited and get somebody engaged and show your personality and your energy virtually. It's definitely tough, but I feel like you can really do it. But people just have to learn new skills about themselves.
So Michael, you just triggered another fantastic virtual meeting I was in about, I think, 2.5 months ago, right? And I use this as an example, exactly to your point, which is you have to adapt, and there are ways to do it. So this was about a 35% meeting, if I recall right, and they got everybody. It was an hour and a half meeting, and the first 15 minutes, they said, they said first 15 minutes, all of the attendees, the 35 people, have to introduce themselves in whatever minute or less, right? So everybody was talking about who they are, why they're there, what they want to get out of it, right? So you've kind of gone through that handshaking, if you will, in a physical conference room, right? Mm-hmm. Or the networking aspect. I thought that was fantastic. And then the panelists got on stage, virtual stage, for 15, 20 minutes, right? And they had this animation expert, like the whiteboard I have at the back, and she was actually virtually drawing stuff in real time as the panelists spoke with each other, right? So the end of those 20 minutes, you actually had the entire conversation on a whiteboard that all of the attendees could see. And the remaining half hour, 40 minutes was like networking time. So you got that visual in front of you, the panelists are available, you guys know each other, 30, 35, and then you just talk about it. At the end of it, everybody got a recorded version of the conversation, including the animation. And I still go back to that. This is like I said, 3 months ago, right? So for me, I think they just cracked it. Right? Because it was an inclusive only audience. You made people feel wanted. You asked them for, hey, what's of interest to you? And you gave them time to actually engage. And I'd say 90% of the people stayed through the entire 90 minutes. Can you believe it? It's like,
I mean, it says
yeah,
volumes,
people,
honestly. It honestly says volumes because I mean, I gotta say I feel bad for the kids who are in college, and trust me, like if a lot of us went to higher education, and went to college and did all that kind of stuff, and sometimes even being physically in class, you're like, you're falling asleep. So how do you make, as to your point, they figured out how to make their presentation engaging and exciting, and it kept your attention because they were doing multiple things that fed into the overall message.
correct.
And I think that's something that people are really, I think the word is their creativeness, is they're figuring out how to bring in additional creativeness into a scenario that forces the human psyche to stay engaged, because it's so hard when you're not in that physical environment, where it's easier to stay engaged because you can feel the energy in the room. You can lean over and ask the person next to you, what do you think of that message? Like, that was really neat, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. I mean, I remember doing this every single time. It's like, hey, I used to actually physically go into these the lunch breaks and sit at a table I don't know anybody else.
Same.
Exactly same thing, which is, hey, what did you like about the presenter, or did he not answer that question properly, and would he ever? But going back to something else that I know you and I are talking about over here, which is again the Teflon analogy of staying unstuck, right? And sometimes, and I'm guilty of this as well, is you get too wrapped up, right? If you're having success, you get wrapped up with the success. If you're having failure, it's like, hey, I need to see this through and I'm going to recover from it. So, and that's a very human thing, right? It is, you get attached to something. So how do you build that level of detachment, especially now with what COVID has taught us is, hey, nothing is permanent, right? Nobody is indispensable. And that's like hitting home every single day. Is any tips and tricks in your trade, or you've seen people do it? I know your buddy Miles and I talked at the first episode of this, and he was talking about it as well. Is how do you build that level of insulation, if you will?
Yeah, I think this has really taught us that you really can't get too comfortable.
Yeah.
Feeling comfortable is definitely something that us as humans, I feel, naturally strive to do, is to feel a level of comfort, and that could be with work, at home, personal, career. Comfort is something that a lot of people just naturally want to feel like, and that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have never allowed myself to just feel complacent and comfortable, and I always feel like I've always stayed on my toes a little bit. And I feel like people really need to do that more. Is it's okay to feel a part of where you're working and feel like you're in your rhythm and you're in your pocket and you're continuing doing things on a daily basis. That's great. But in the back of your mind, you always need to be ready to stay on your toes and to be able to pivot just in case, you need to not be sticky and not feel stuck in your current situation, and be able to be flexible and agile and be a chameleon.
Yeah.
And be able to move into whatever it is that you need to move into, to whether it is, have an income, support your family, continue your career. I think it's all about mindset. It's good. As I said, it's good to feel comfortable, but you got to stay on your toes. You gotta be ready for any situation, and it's way easier said than done. And I don't want people to think that just saying that is that simple, but it's way easier said than done. But I think people need to start thinking that way, and start thinking, if I got to pivot, I got to pivot. And I think what kind of helped me with that is, it's a quick story, is when I moved from Pennsylvania down to Maryland really early in my career, and I wasn't happy with my current trajectory and where I was at the time. So I made a very drastic move to just leave my job and move to Maryland without a plan. So I completely unstuck myself and threw myself into a highly, uncomfortable situation where I had no plan. I had no job. I was living off the money that I had left in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And I put myself in that situation. And I don't think I realized it at the time, but I think in my subconscious, I needed to put myself in a really awkward situation to be able to think on my feet and figure it out, and be agile and be a chameleon, and really do that because I think that scenario and that experience has put me in a whole different mindset moving forward with not allowing myself to feel stuck and always being ready to, with a Teflon plan, just flip and go if you have to. And, you know, a lot of people will probably be adverse to putting themselves in that kind of, you know, precarious situation. But I really think I found value in that. And I think that's why your concept of Teflon and not sticking resonates with me so much, because I literally put myself in a situation where I unstuck myself and threw myself into this scenario that made me be agile, made me figure things out. And, you know, I don't want people to think that they need to quit their job and just do something drastic to make themselves feel that. But I think it's always just about staying on your toes, realizing that nothing is permanent.
Yeah.
Clearly, I mean, I hate going back to COVID because I'm like sick and tired of hearing about it.
Yeah.
But it's such a perfect example of the current day on why we need to be okay with change and why you need to diversify yourself just a little bit, but be okay with also learning new things and trying new things. It's definitely, I think, I really do think a lot of people are going to find more value in that mindset. And I think more people are even finding value in forcing themselves to become creative with doing stuff over virtual. Quick side note, on the side, I'm also a DJ.
Okay, now you tell me that.
So on the side, I'm a DJ. I've been DJing for 10 years, and I used to do like major nightclubs. I've done, I do, 30 plus weddings a year on the side. And, the entertainment industry is something that took a massive hit.
Yeah.
It was literally the first thing to go. And, I was having gigs pretty much almost probably 30, 40 weekends out of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. On top of my job.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out a way in the beginning of this whole scenario of COVID of how to adapt. And a lot of other people in the entertainment industry also did that. They adapted to their scenario. And I was forced to live stream my music and live stream my DJing sets in person to still engage people and still kind of brand myself, for my events and for my clients and things like that. And I feel like more people are being forced to do things that were originally to them uncomfortable. Because before I would have been like, no, I'm definitely not streaming. Like, I'm not going to stare at myself on a screen for, an hour playing music and engaging with people over messages and different things like that. So I think a lot of people are also being forced to, unstick their comfort ways and try things that are different, like streaming, doing live podcasts, live LinkedIn's, to continue that engagement. So,
No, you're spot on. So I just wanted to share this with the viewers, and this is something that I think it hit probably today, right? Yeah, today is the 2nd of September. And it's a timely article because it talks about how to build emotional strength. You got to expand your brain.
Yeah.
So it's almost counterintuitive, but they're saying that in order for you to actually be good at what you're doing, you have to try a number of different things, and different parts of the brain get activated. And it's a fantastic article. So I'd suggest people to definitely take a look and read that. The other aspect, I think you mentioned this, and again, this whole concept of being able to try different things. And for me, again, this one of the professors in biz school told me this: allow yourself the discomfort.
Yep.
And so for me, that has been a really life-changing phrase, because the allow piece is you're being kind to yourself. It's not like your dad is telling you, your friends are telling you, the social circle you work in is telling you to, no, you have to allow yourself. But also, to your point, be okay with being uncomfortable. Yeah. Right. And I think for lots of people that's really hard to do, but that's the only way to kind of survive, right? So, and again, I know we have another 5 or 6 minutes, so I'm looking to see if there are any more comments. Not yet. So I think one of the, again, this goes back to something that stuck in my brain. This was about, I think, 2.5, 3 years ago, and it was an ex-colleague of mine, And I use this thing to actually get feedback when I'm working for any organization. I use start, stop, continue. Start, hey, what is it that you think I should be doing that I'm not doing? Stop, you think I'm doing something stupid that needs to stop. Continue, hey, maybe I'm doing something right that I want to get feedback on. So Michael said, this guy who's a sales leader, he came and told me, Ashwin, can you stop writing those tech articles that draw analogies to people everyday lives? And so for me, it gave me pause, because here I was trying to make tech understandable. And I knew it was resonating based on the comments that I was getting. But what he was trying to tell me was, dude, you're not doing your job. If you have so much time to write about these tech articles, can you not spend that time doing more work for your day job? And I just go back to that, because if I had listened to him, I would have stopped. I would have continued doing what I was doing.
Yep.
And the opposite of where I am right now, which is, you know what, I diversified like crazy, right?
Yep.
And this is an experiment like you and I are doing right now. It's like, this is my third LinkedIn live. Maybe I suck as a LinkedIn live host and I'm going to stop doing it, or maybe I get traction and I continue doing it. So it's all about experimentation. So talk a little bit about what gives you the courage to take in the people, I wouldn't call them the haters, but the people who kind of snide comments, people who are looking to say, hey, this is another of those Michael fads going to go away. And then the supporters who actually want to be like you. And then how do you give them hope? Because it's not just about you, it's about the people who want to follow you. And then how do you help them through that?
Sure. So I feel like as a whole, people need to learn to be okay with being, as you mentioned, just, uncomfortable, and receive, and be able to, in a healthy way, receive criticism, and take it for what it's worth. Don't take it to heart all the time, but extract pieces of it, and really analyze, what that criticism is, and realize, does it have merit? Should I take it personally? Like for your instance, that was criticism. He was giving you constructive criticism from him to you.
Yep.
You took it, you analyzed it, and you figured out, well, I don't need to do X, Y, and Z, but I maybe need to do these things as well. And one thing that was tough for me at first was, while I was trying to grow myself professionally in my career, it's funny, and this kind of feeds into that whole DJing thing, and that a musician side of me, which you didn't know about, so I surprised you, was, I had that whole other side of me that was very prominent, and people knew about it. And, it sometimes made people feel uncomfortable, especially like leaders of mine and bosses, because they're like, well, if you're doing this, are you taking time away and focus away from your full-time job?
Bingo.
And, at first I was concerned. I was like, Michael, like, are you putting your career at jeopardy?
Yeah.
Are people going to think differently of you? And if they do, is that going to put your career trajectory, your professional trajectory at risk? And, I thought about this a lot, and I eventually said, nope, I'm going to continue doing what I enjoy to do, and that's music on the side, and building that business. But the time that is spent working, I'm going to put my full effort and focus into it, and almost prove to them that shouldn't matter. That shouldn't matter at all, So I'm so glad that you brought that up. That's so perfect. And I think the way I've been able to navigate that is, I've definitely had bosses and leaders that will look at me like, is he serious? Because, can he take this job seriously? Can he really deliver? And every single time, and this is the competitive side of me, is I see it as a challenge.
Yeah.
And I love a challenge, because I really enjoy proving people wrong, and doubling down on my strengths and delivering. And when they see, they're like, man, like, he really brought it, and he did a good job, and all that other stuff, it doesn't even matter anymore. Yeah. But I think people need to, like, be able to take criticism in a healthy way, and also don't be too judgmental on yourself in that sense. And don't move away from what you want to be doing to please or appear to be a certain type of way.
Yeah.
And I feel like I feel like leaders and managers and all that stuff are becoming, and organizations are becoming more accepting of those things, because in reality, having that other piece of my life and piece of who I am, I think has made me better at my job.
Could not agree more. I mean, the amount of energy you derive from things that, like you said, your side gig, for me, it's these podcasts and these LinkedIn lives. It just makes you so much better. But again, I think this is a topic that isn't talked about as much,
No,
right? Which is, hey, how are people going to look at you? Are they going to look at you as a slacker? Are they going to look at you as, hey, he or she is not spending 12 hours a day and the weekends if they're also doing the writing and the singing and the DJ and all that other stuff? But
110%, 110%. It's a bad mindset.
yeah.
It's a bad mindset. People will be more productive in their professional careers if they have outlets and if they have passions and passion projects and things that they enjoy to do.
Yeah.
Because you'll actually pick up skills doing those things that will feed into your career and into your full-time profession in ways that you never would realize.
Right.
And I wish we had like another half hour, because I could go on a whole other.
I'm going to invite you again, man. So we got to go this. Yeah,
discussion just about this, because it's so true. But oh man, you got me. What time is it here? It's 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and I'm ready to rock and roll now. You got me.
See, that's the power. But I think, yeah. I mean, on that note, I think for the listeners, for the viewers, I mean, this is important, right? So realizing it's not just about having a side gig. This is actually existential, right? You can do much better what you're doing right now, having the side gig, and we've seen the effect of what COVID is doing to all of us, and sometimes the side gig could become your main gig too. So in any which way you look at it, don't
be sticky.
Correct.
You got to pivot. If I had a pivot, I could technically.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people on like Etsy doing things on their side projects and making careers out of it now. And
exactly.
Great idea, great concept. And this specific topic, man, you need to bring me back.
I will. You got it.
Yeah, it's so big. But thank you for having me on. And
absolutely, thank you, Michael. Thanks to everybody who's watching and listening and commenting after the fact too. Thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.